Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so happy to be with me, Mr. Adam Hooks from Hooks and the Huckleberries. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, how are you today?
I am doing great. All the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So you just finished up lunch. How
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
day so far?
I mean, the day was a day. Let's just put it that way. It's I got an early start with a dog walk like I usually do, and then paced the house to get rid of some anxiety before going out into the real world, and now I'm sitting down with you to have a cool chat. So
This is great, man. So let's talk about it. So you guys started in 2020, 2019?
2020, at the time, essentially what happened was I was in a punk band called Russian Girlfriends, and I was hitting the wall with a lot of things in my personal life that were in turn affecting how I was feeling about that band at the time, and kind of making me question like what did I really want to do musically with my life. And I was starting to feel very limited by the world of punk rock, which is funny because when I first got into punk rock, like the idea was you can be whoever you want and be your true self. And like that's what makes it cool. And it just seemed like once I was in that world, uh, there was for a genre that likes to express how little rules they have. There ended up being a lot of rules to punk rock that, and at a certain point I started feeling myself become more and more disconnected with like needing to look a certain way and needing to only listen to this kind of music. And I don't think it's always like that, but that's just the way I was feeling with it at the time after spending years on the road, and most of all of those years drunk. Like it was time. And so the pandemic hit, and like weirdly enough, like the world was falling apart, yet somehow for myself it gave me the time to like just like stop and reevaluate things that I really needed to reevaluate. And on top of leaving or leaving slash being forced to leave my former punk band, and also like finally ending like an 8-year extremely toxic romantic relationship. Like there was just a lot of things that I was doing at the time. And uh Josh Lee, the guitar player for the Huckleberries, like I had seen him around town playing in various projects, and I knew like he was mostly a country player, or at least that's what he was doing when I had seen him. But I had already started like being a little bit more interested in that world, more mostly because I was kind of like coming back to my roots. So like growing up in the rural Midwest, like I was surrounded by country music, most of it not very good and on country radio. But then there was also like the people who were really into Hank Williams and Johnny Cash, and I was lucky enough to have a family that had like just was very open to all different styles of music. And so I grew up listening to Merle Haggard, and then the next album that would get put on would be like the Pixies' Doolittle, or like so it was luck. I'm very grateful and lucky to have been able to grow up with that because it opened my mind to so much so early. And when I was stepping away from punk rock, like I've always been a songwriter, and I've always used the acoustic guitar as my main instrument, just as far as for writing songs. And like so I was starting to get back just into like just focusing on writing and being myself and playing solo. And I had contacted Josh Lee about a possible like jam session since everybody had lost all their shows, and like we were kind of just sitting on our asses, and he was like, yeah, like I'd be totally down for that, and so I brought my guitar over to his place in Corrales, and we chilled outside for a little bit, and like we're just like trading stuff back and forth, and I brought some new song ideas, and I think only about 15 minutes went by, and he was just like, so like when do you want to make an album? Like it was like 15 minutes into the jam session, and he was already all in. He'd already like heard the songs I was writing before, and it was really interesting because I think he might have been the first one to literally tell me, like, even the songs you were writing in your punk band were fucking country songs. Like, you were just playing them really fast. And just that the idea that, yeah, it's about the song, and it doesn't even matter what genre you file on it. It's about just writing good songs and good music. And so that started this journey, like we focused in 2020 on mostly just Josh and I. I'm like, well, let's make an album. We didn't even know if it was going to be a band or just a project we did during the pandemic or what. Like, and that's why we had a lot of hired musicians and stuff on the first record, was because at that time it was Josh and I, and then like people that he knew, people that I knew, that we pulled into the studio to like become part of this project. And luckily through that process is how we found our drummer Dustin, who is now who has been like an official member, and and one of the most important members of the band, since he decided to join it. Like it's pretty flattering to bring in a drummer to play on a record, knowing he has several other projects that he's doing, and by the time the record is finished, he has left all those projects to focus on your songs. Like it's I'm still kind of can't believe that as a 38-year-old man who's been struggling to do this his whole life, I've also gotten other adults to join me on this, and to put a lot on the line to try to make a drop in the ocean count, I guess.
So let's talk about songwriting, because you touched on it a little bit there. Are you more of a lyrics first and then music, or are you music first and then lyrics?
It definitely depends, but I'd say for the most part, lyrics first, then music, which can sometimes lead me into writing the same song over and over, and I got to be careful with that. And that's another great reason that I'm like thankful to have Josh and Dustin as like full-time collaborators, because they're also, beyond being incredible musicians, like they're also incredible music fans. And so they have ideas from, that I would not think of, and vice versa. And that tends to make a better song, a better album, a better live experience, everything. So,
So, so basically, the pandemic obviously just was a debacle for the music industry in particular, and mainly because of the live and touring aspect being eliminated. You're right. I think a lot of bands like you use that time to either get better as a band that they were already in, or try something new because everything was shut down. So it is kind of cool how, 4 years later, 3 years later, that, we're finally seeing the fruits of all of that. You know what that mean?
yeah, it's crazy to like how many people we've run into on the road, and it's like everybody has a similar story, and it's like, man, it's like it was a terrible time, and yet somehow it became one of the most creatively fruitful times, like of our lives, as far as the Huckleberries are concerned. It's pretty amazing, and I'm the fact that we're still doing it and making it more successful, at least as much as we can in the modern world. Like It's great. So,
So let's talk about Albuquerque, New Mexico. I have not been there, and it sucks that I've not been there. It's definitely going to be on my list. But for someone who's not been there before, if you're a travel agent or if you're a real estate agent, sell me on the city, and then let's talk about the music scene then.
all right, all right. Uh, do you want the honest representation of Albuquerque, or do you want like the actual like tourism department, like there are no problems here version?
A-
Uh,
Adam, after listening to your songs and the honesty that comes out in them, if you didn't give me the honest version,
you would see right through it. I'm a pretty open book, but yeah, I mean, Albuquerque is such like an amazing and interesting place because it has incredible natural beauty. Like you go, 15 minutes in any direction from the city, and you're either going to be in the mountains or at the petroglyphs or volcanoes or just the beautiful desert mesa. Like I mean, like there's just great natural beauty, and surrounding the city, and then the city itself, seems it's as much as I love it, it's a small city with very big city problems, and I'm sure that's pretty much every place in America right now. When it comes to things like the fentanyl crisis and violent crime, because a lot of that feeds in to each other, and so Albuquerque is definitely as great of a city as it is, and as much as I love it, it's a city in crisis right now. And so it's been difficult because when I first moved here, it was it was just kind of this wild hippie town, as where like so many different cultures just like interplayed together in this small city, and it creates a very unique culture and atmosphere that you're definitely not going to get anywhere else. Like we have, like, it's not Mexican food. We have new Mexican food, and it's a different thing. We got red and green chili. These are, if you ever do come visit and get a burrito and they ask you what chili you want, like that's a very important question to New Mexicans and Burqueños, as you would be called if you lived in Albuquerque. But you have uh, the beautiful representation of a very present indigenous populations from the Pueblos and the Navajo Nation. You have you do have like the Hispanic culture and the old New Mexican families that came here like forever ago and have had land here for so long. You have like the the Caucasian population, like you have the Vietnamese population, a lot of which moved here after the Vietnam War, and it just makes it a very unique melting pot, and I'm just like other cities, I'm sure there's uh struggle between all of those cultures, but honestly, like I feel that I don't feel that as much in Albuquerque. Like I just feel like in Albuquerque there's a lot of respect to be had for the fact that everybody kind of knows the deal. Like, yeah, we're all here, making this thing happen, and this is why Albuquerque is Albuquerque, and part of the things that makes it beautiful. Ugh.
does that then bleed into the music scene?
Absolutely. I mean, so like you can go downtown and go to a brewery and see like a mariachi band, and then go see a thrash metal band at Launchpad, and then maybe hop over to Sister and there'll be like a hip hop show, with like the local hip hop scene like coming up soon. Every year there's something called like 808s or oh, forgot. Sorry. There's a pretty thriving hip hop scene here as well, is what I was trying to say. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely, just like in any other big city, there's definitely no limits to the styles you're going to find. Um, and that's really cool, and usually those artists will usually end up playing like some event together, and next thing you know, there's collaborations. Like when I very first moved to New Mexico, even before I got into the punk rock scene, like I fell in to a crew of hip hop heads, and so I thought I was a rapper for 5 years, and tried to do that, and it was always very apparent that I was much better at writing folk songs than I was at writing hip hop songs. But like those are still my friends, like I'll still go and see a b-boy competition, like on Valentine's Day, or like, just because it's like, yeah, it's a great city, and it does breed creativity. I do feel like a lot of times the scene in Albuquerque, though, has kind of a crabs in a barrel mentality, unfortunately, where it's like they want the art and the music for themselves, and it's celebrated and respected. But as soon as you try to break out and do something bigger, and not just be an Albuquerque band, or it's like this reaction to, like, it's almost like, oh, they think they're better than us, that they're going to try to get out of Albuquerque, or and unfortunately, I feel like that holds the music scene back a lot, because as a result, no one really tries harder than they have to just get a show downtown, or to, like it doesn't, and that doesn't mean that there's not talent and not great songwriters and great bands and artists, but like there's a lot of that, we're doing just fine here. We don't, why try to be anything else, and that's something that we, right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I guess though that's kind of a testament almost though to the city though, because I would say if you talk to most musicians that live in, like you said, major cities, that life isn't sustainable. So, if these artists can do that, I
Well,
guess that's like a double-edged sword a little bit, huh?
well, here's the other thing, though. It's like by doing it, it's certainly not doing it and making a living off it. It's not like
Okay.
In Texas you could straight up play nothing but Texas and make 100 grand a year, and like it's just the other thing Albuquerque doesn't have is money at all, which is another reason the city's in crisis. It's just, we're like one of the worst in the nation for education, one of the worst in the nation for violent crime and property crime, one of the worst in the nation for addiction. I mean, like, all of these things like are other things that help hold the scene back, honestly, and
Too bad.
I know it's not just here, but it's almost like more visible here because it's a smaller city, but the problem is just as big, and so, yeah.
Well said. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. So, you kind of touched on it earlier. So the transition from being in a punk band to now being with the Huckleberries. I know the similarities, but for our audience and for an audience that might not be familiar, what are the similarities between punk and country?
I mean, the way I view it is that they're both music for the people, for the common man. It just seems like one is more associated with an urban environment, and the other associated with a more rural environment. But the similarity is as far as like even like song structure and subject matter, and like there's more similarities than there are differences. And you know I know there's a lot of people, and this includes me, because I was in this group for a long time, that they hear the term country music, and they immediately associate it with this post 9/11 patriotic pandering bullshit. And yeah, like especially growing up in rural South Dakota when 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden there's a fucking American flag every 5 feet, and there's like it, like, and these are people that have never even visited New York City in their life, like, I mean, not to say that they shouldn't show support for fallen countrymen, but like, there was just such, like, I just, like the music coming out, it was like people, like artists were forced to pick a side, and that's why you had the bullshit Toby Keith versus Dixie Chicks, fight happening back then. And it turned, like, it started kind of turning country music into this thing that it wasn't supposed to be. Or, if like where it was all like it, you have to be, politically more on the right side, and like that's because that's who this music is for, and then it's like, but I know it's not, because I just listened to Johnny Cash talk about like what we did to the Lakota Nation. When we forced them on the reservations. I just heard, like what do you mean this is only for the right side, But because I was, in high school and a punk rocker, whatever, it's like, yeah, fuck country music, man. Like I definitely found myself falling into that category, even though I had been raised on Steve Earle and like raised on Jason and the Scorchers, and like these bands that were like these artists and bands that were country, but also very openly pretty left, and kind of calling, like, their stance on the political things were calling out the people in charge for, why are you not taking care of our veterans, and why are, not just like send them over to kill brown people in a country that were invading for their oil. Like, it's, like it's, and so, yeah, like when I was finally having my return moment to like settling down and getting back to just kind of playing folk songs again, and like just going back to my roots and focusing on the song as opposed to the genre, like that. And when Josh and I first, when we started like collaborating, and he was like showing me all these country artists he was listening to, and I was, and I think I had no idea that like there had started this new movement of country kind of trying to take it back from that vision of things, like all of a sudden you had Tyler Childers and Sturgill Simpson, and like, and these artists that were like coming out that were fucking incredible, that like, had I maybe not been exposed to them in the right way, like maybe wouldn't have even considered checking them out, because it was country, and like that's not who I am, as an individual or politically or whatever. And so, yeah, like that realization of like listening to people, Jason Isbell, Tyler Childers, and I had like started to dabble in it, but then, when Josh really brought me into that world was when I had that major realization of like, this is the same shit. This is the same shit. And in fact, I'm listening to these songs by these country artists, and the subject matter and the way they're bringing it across is way more fucking punk than half the shit I hear in the punk world now. Like, yeah.
I must say, and you probably, I think you would agree. I feel like, though, today's country, and I mean like the last 5 years, right? It seems like country is now kind of sounding more like hip hop and rap than punk, because it's a lot of like, over the top, like, over the top trucks and showing like them on vacation, and like,
Oh
talking about
yeah.
women, and like, it seems a little bit more like, and what I have, like material stuff.
Well, especially I mean, probably the mainstream
Correct.
country. And like, I'm not trying to sound like that guy who, like, I don't listen to mainstream country, but I kind of don't.
I'm talking
Like,
about like Luke Bryan and like Florida Georgia Line, like those bands. But like, you're right, Jason Isbell, Zach Bryan, I would even say like Wilco, like bands like that, it's country, but it has like you said, more of a punk edge to it, and they have something to say. It's not just what I have, like a list of what I have.
Right, absolutely, and that's all. I mean, as a music fan, that's obviously for me why I'm drawn more towards that side of things. And like, I still think there's a place and time for just fucking party music or like dance music. Like, obviously, not like, not every song has to be like a brilliantly written, like sometimes you just want a song about shaking your ass. Or and that's fine, but I definitely like being a songwriter myself, like I'm always more drawn towards someone that's speaking a personal truth that I can like connect with and relate to. And like it's really cool actually seeing a lot of these artists come up and playing country and Americana that openly admit they grew up listening to punk and grunge. And like there's an artist that's been really influencing me and Josh recently. His name is Steven Wilson Jr. and he's a Nashville artist, but he grew up in Indiana in the same town as John Mellencamp. So like he has that influence, and he also like just talks a lot in his songs about like hearing Kurt Cobain for the first time, and so he has this amazing element of like he plays in drop D, and it's like if grunge were country and not in a cheesy way. Like there are bands that have kind of tried to do that recently that I'm not too into, but Steven Wilson Jr. is not only a great songwriter, like he's really been able to like add that like 90s punk and grunge influence into his music without it being pandery, without it taking away from the song, and it's super cool. And so like growing up also like a huge like Nirvana fan and just like grunge fan in general. Like I just love seeing these artists start to be like, not, it's no longer just like, if I'm going to play country music, I have to pretend like I spent every moment of my life in a rodeo or on a farm or, it's like, like there's just more of an honesty coming out with artists, and I appreciate it. And he's one of them that especially recently has been really like making us think about like, man, like like maybe we don't need to shy away from our punk side as much, like so yeah.
So we kind of discovered you on our Road to South by series. So obviously you're going to South by. Have you been to Austin before? And if not, what are you excited about playing at South by?
I mean, we've definitely been to Austin before, and I've been there with my punk bands as well as with the Huckleberries. I have a lot of friends that live out there, so like it's like I always get really excited to be able to like reconnect with people I don't get to see very often, and just laugh, hang out, go to a show, have a good time. I'm really excited this year. Like last year, we got to play an unofficial showcase, and we had a great time. It was of course chaotic because South by Southwest is notorious for being pretty chaotic, and you have people carrying gear 3 miles to get to their next gig. I mean, like, and yet that's also part of the fun, weirdly. Weirdly, this year we get to be official South by Southwest artists, which I've never gotten to do before with any other band, and I'm really really excited that it's with this band because I feel like this is the best, like any of us have ever been as far as what just as musicians and songwriters and performers, like we got notification that we get to play an Atomic booking showcase. Atomic is our booking agency that we are with and that we share with many other amazing artists, and we are very lucky because we stumbled into getting a booking agency probably sooner than we should have, and we greatly appreciate it. What's up, Kyle? That's our booking agent. But we got notification that we are going to be playing the official atomic showcase at the Continental Club, and the Continental Club is a pretty notorious venue in Austin. And we hung out and watched some of our friends play there last year. And like, one of my favorite writers, Larry McMurtry, or sorry, James McMurtry. Larry McMurtry is his father. But James McMurtry did a residency there, or maybe even still does. I'm not sure. So I mean, it's like after already seeing that stage and seeing so many cool artists perform at it, like I'm grateful that we get to finally play. Like we get to play on that stage, and we get a really good slot, and we get like a 50-minute slot. We were expecting to play 20 minutes because it's South by Southwest, and we're just we're beyond stoked that they're giving us enough, like a good spot and enough time to really show what we do, because we've spent a lot of time trying to make this band ourselves and unique, and and I think we have. And so now we get to show the world at one of the most important festivals in the world. So
Continental Club, I can say, and I can tell it is amazing. Like you can feel like the history when you walk into that place, and the acoustics are fantastic. Our friends, the Peterson brothers, have done residencies there. A band that we featured actually in the episode before you for the Road to South by series, the West Texas Exiles. They're doing a residency there currently.
Oh yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah, really,
I know
yeah,
that
really,
name.
really talented guys as well. So yeah, Continental is definitely. You're right. It's definitely. So what night is that?
I might have to get back to you on that because it's in my calendar on my phone, and
Hopefully, it's past the 13th.
I believe it is. I think
Okay.
it's like, I think it might be like the 15th or 16th or something.
Okay.
But yeah.
Good. Okay.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we're there the 13th to the 18th. So.
Oh, great. So we'll get to meet in person. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh
Okay, cool.
yeah. This will be the fifth year that we've gone. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, we're gonna essentially be out there for like the whole thing. We're gonna networking,
Yep.
going and seeing our friends play. I mean, and hopefully picking up a couple extra gigs. So
Yep.
it's gonna be
That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. Just play as much as you can, right?
yeah, exactly. Even if it's busking, like just get
Right.
out there.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go back in time a little bit because we just briefly brushed on that. You are a PK, which for people who out there don't know who that means or what that means, you are the son of a preacher. So talk about family life, how that was, how that kind of shaped you as a man.
Uh, well, if for the listeners, if they don't know the common thread between PKs, it's that you overcompensate for having a publicly religious father figure by doing a lot of shit that gets you in trouble, and almost going out of your way to prove that like that you don't, to shed the responsibility that I think is put on you from a community standpoint by just knowing that your father is a religious leader. I mean, the reason we moved around so much growing, I moved around so much growing up was, I mean, and that's like, like a lot of people move around because of military families, and ours was because of a religious family. My dad, weirdly enough, grew up. His mother's Jewish, which would technically make him Jewish, but somehow he, as he describes it, got the calling to be a Lutheran pastor, and so he went to seminary school in St. Paul, Minnesota, and so he was around the 80s Minneapolis punk rock scene, like the Replacements and Husker Du, Soul Asylum, a lot of those bands, which are now bands that definitely probably influenced me almost more than any other, the Minneapolis scene. But so Minneapolis, St. Paul is where he did his seminary training, and then I think he graduated around the time that I was 3 or 4, I'd say. And his first placement as a pastor was at a country church out in Nebraska, in like Gideon, Nebraska, a very small town. And we literally lived like way out in the country, where I would spend my childhood walking the mile down the dirt road to go hang out in the graveyard and like blow bubbles, and yeah, I mean, like that, like my parents, they have told me before that they would catch me blowing bubbles sitting on the gravestones to make the spirits happy. If that is any indication of who I am now. But yeah, so like, like I grew up going to church services, and essentially watching my father perform in a different standpoint, and going to funerals, and learning how to sing in church and choir, like I was, but like I had stated previously, like even though I was in a religious family, my family were also huge music fans, and my dad was, into punk rock, and the Beatles, and Johnny Cash, and so I was never forced to only listen to Christian music or anything, which I'm grateful for. But also I feel like made me didn't like helped me not appreciate gospel as much until I was older, because I think there was just like the country thing, it was a little bit like, like trying to take myself away from the church life, especially as I got into my teens, and discovered punk rock, and and the angst and rebellion that came with that. So we moved every 3 or 4 years, but we generally stayed in the Great Plains states in the Midwest. So it was like Nebraska, Montana, Minnesota, and then South Dakota. And I do consider Aberdeen, South Dakota, my hometown, just because that's where I graduated high school and got in the most trouble, and and where I was so desperate to get the hell out of, as soon as I turned 18, which I did. So yeah, like it was I would say it was interesting seeing the religious world from the position that I saw it from, because you got like I had the benefit and discouragement of seeing it from like the inside out, because my dad was the preacher. Like, I got to see the inner workings behind the scenes of like what runs a church, and like, and then on top of that, like, experiencing these different congregations, and yeah, and the pressure that's put on you, and the expectations put on you, being the son of a pastor, when you yourself see the other side, which is this is just my dad, who's a human being who does this as a job, and he like listens, to the dead Kennedys, and drinks whiskey, and like just like probably other dads do, but because he's the pastor, like there's, it's like, not that he was like necessarily secretive, but like there's definitely like there's this side of life, and then there's this side of life, and they don't necessarily mix. And I always found that frustrating, because I was like, my dad was a fairly progressive liberal pastor for the places he was getting put in to preach, and and that caused some problems with a lot of the congregations, because he wasn't Republican, and he wasn't, and he wasn't racist, and he wasn't, like he would preach what he believed the gospel was saying, and not a lot of people in the towns we were living in liked that or liked hearing what he had to say. which which led to issues, and and beyond that, because he was a human who also suffered from mental illness and addiction and those things. uh those also affected his career as well, and he ended up eventually leaving the church and losing his faith for a while, and and actually leaving our family for a while, which you know unfortunately did not help the development of his children, or or and definitely put a lot of I would say anger towards religion, especially at that time. Although at this point in my life, well, I still don't consider myself Christian. I no longer hate Christianity, or whatever, the way I feel like I did for a while there. So yeah, the moving around a lot uh, made it a little bit like I'd make friends, but then I'd have to get new ones 3 years later, which tends to create loners. And so I feel like on top of that, the fact that I was being raised by essentially a liberal punk rock hippie pastor, in these Republican anti-hippie, community, essentially communities, that I feel like unfortunately also aided the lonerism aspects of, and you start learning to be your own friend and hang out with yourself a lot and listen and just constantly have headphones on the bus to school and stuff like that, and so I did develop some strong friendships throughout that period, but yeah, looking back, it's like it definitely created more issues than I think I realized. After the period of time where my father's mental illness got to be too much for him or the family to handle, and he in essence abandoned the family for a few years. That also, that gives people some trust issues, and and things like that. And it didn't help that with his mental illness, he had started developing an interest in drugs again. And because I was a teenager, also getting into this music that sort of supported a drug usage lifestyle, I think he used that as an opportunity to bond with his son, and unfortunately it was something that wasn't very healthy. And so I was essentially taught how to be a drug addict at a very young age, and I'm still dealing with that, but also I'm at a point in my life now where I'm healthy enough to where I can talk about it and not be ashamed. It's I feel like I have a responsibility as someone who has finally figured some shit out, to pull people up with me if I can, I that's one of the reasons I try to maintain as much honesty as possible, both in my songwriting and in just talking to people. I don't want to be ashamed of, what my life was, because it's helping me form the life that I have now, and that I'm looking forward to in the future. And as shitty as a lot of that stuff was, it is who I am why I am who I am today, and why I write the songs I write, And so, honesty, as far as I'm concerned, is only going to help people. I mean, it might piss off my dad that I'm talking about it, but fuck dad.
So let's talk about inspiration. So the latest single, Babylon for Lovers, what was the inspiration behind that song?
So, so I was in the band. I was in a punk band called Russian Girlfriends at the time, and my very good friend Daniel Daniel Plucanoda had just gotten back from like an epic trip to Jamaica. Like he this guy was a world traveler, man. He lived in like Vietnam and Cambodia for a year. He went to Jamaica. Like he craved that experience of just like immersing himself in another culture and learning from that. And and he came back from Jamaica and just like was obsessed with modern reggae and dance hall music, and like these artists that I had never given the time of day to, like Ja Vinci and Vibes Cartel and Massacre, like people that like if you don't know that music, these names mean mean fucking nothing. But he brought this music back, and like at the time, like I was really struggling to like quit opiates, and I'd been making strides, and but like was still kind of like hung up on like just like making that full commitment to leave it completely behind. And Daniel had come back, and he just and he was rolling spliffs and like listening to reggae music, and he was just like, no man, you gotta fucking fuck chemicals, dude. Like listen to this music, man. It's all about positive living and like getting your mindset out of what the colonizers want you to think. I'm like, Daniel, we are descended from colonizers. He's like, still, man, like we got like you got to get out of that mindset. It's Babylon, man. America's fucking Babylon, and like and it's designed to hold you back spiritually and emotionally, and so he's sharing with me all this music and like this like new structure to his life that he had found, and it was like, and it really did like get like kind of like kind of jolt me awake and like give me this like means to be like, yeah, man, like fuck chemicals. Like if I'm gonna do drugs, like just smoke weed, man. Like the creator gave this to you, like there was a lot of that like finally went into me being like, yeah, like no cocaine, no oxy, like no whatever, like fuck that shit. If you're gonna do anything, do it natural, and don't let those things control you, because they want you controlled. It took me a little longer to finally let go of alcohol, which is almost the worst of them, but it was still influenced by a lot of the same things that he was talking to me about at the time. And so yeah, like the song came out of this my personal struggle to like stop just being complacent in this like culture of excess until death, like and celebration of poverty and celebration of depression. And so it was just this realization of like, yeah, like that like I thought originally when I was started using drugs that it was rebellious, or that it was made me an individual, or was and then like the older I got and the more I stepped back to look at things, and it was like, but I'm not doing anything. Like I'm not actually doing anything. I'm getting high and sitting at home and watching TV, or like drinking at the bar and like talking shit with some stranger. And none of this is making the world a better place. And none of this is helping me to be a better person. Like to be a better person so I can make the world a better place, in any faction that I possibly can. And so, yeah, that's where that song was born out of. It was a personal frustration, and this like and this struggle to get out of myself, and to act bigger than myself, but also with the honesty that this is the culture this is what we were given, and we can only work within this structure. So like, what can I do, and what will I actually do? And so it's calling myself out as much as it is calling everybody else out. It's like, what would I do, and what would I do without? Nothing. And so I feel like a lot of times the songs I write are like mantras for myself to try to motivate myself to fucking do something, to get out of my own head and actually commit to action instead of just thought.
So let's talk about a collaborator, Mr. Matt Pence. How did that collaboration come about? And talk about how his impact on that album.
Man, uh, so we're huge fans of Jason Isbell and the 400 unit, and we had decided after our first record, because the first record wasn't really a full band collaboration. It was, my songs and Josh's production. And so because we had finally gotten to a point where like we are an official band, we are writing songs together. We are, like we are now, this is now something more than just a project. We had decided that we wanted to do something that we had all talked about our entire lives, which was hire an actual legitimate producer who has produced records that we love to produce our record, and we had looked into a bunch of different bands that we liked at the time, other than Jason Isbell and the 400 unit, like John Padigo, who did like Joshua Ray Walker's records, and I'm trying to, and some other bands in Texas, and like was a big part of the Dallas scene, and like, like we were just listening to a bunch of albums, kind of looking at who produced them, and we started kind of like, well, all we can do is ask, and just started kind of sending out emails of like, this is the kind of, here's who we are, this is what we want to do, here's some demos to new songs, and here's our old record, like, would you want to work with us? And we didn't get any responses, and we might have, we were probably shooting a little high for some of them, like I'm really sorry to have sent you 20 emails, Rick Rubin, but I just thought maybe no, just kidding. And, but anyway, Matt Pence actually responded, and he responded in the positive. Like he was straight up like, this sounds awesome. Yeah, I would love to work with you guys. And we were just like, I remember when we got the email back that he was like interested in working, and it was like, what? Like, he really, like, he actually wants to work with us. Oh, okay. And so like, we talked to him, we asked his price, and then we, just went about like, all right, we were like, okay, well, we're definitely not, we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves. And so we started, we did a Kickstarter and a crowdfunding campaign. And I'm normally against those because I like to be self-sufficient, and that's probably just from growing up in the Midwest. But one thing that we also noticed was happening while the band was becoming the band was that, like, we were developing a really cool like cult following of people who I think had the same disenchantment with country music that we had when we were younger, that we were now discovering was no longer the case. And like, and so it was, it was actually like it was really cool to actually get to ask our fans to help us with, the paying for the production of this record, because I feel like we were able to actually, like, in a weird way, personally bring them into the process and actually offer them like cool incentives to be part of this thing, because, and so now looking back, and it's like, yes, we made this record, but we made this record like with our fans, and that's really cool. Like that's really, really cool. And so, like we figured out a good time that we could do the recording, which ended up being 2 weeks in between his tours. Like he was on the road with Shaky Graves, playing drums, and then was getting ready to go back on the road with Jason Isbell in like 2 weeks. And he just goes, all right, so I have this 2 week window. Can we do it then? And we're like, yeah, we'll make it work, you know? And we went down to Denton, Texas. I love Denton, Texas. And we went down to Denton, Texas for 2 weeks, and slept on families, like our family's couch. Our drummer's uh, uh, mother-in-law like lives down there, and so she loves the band as well and supports us. And so we went and essentially slept on their couches for 2 weeks, and just every day for 10 hours a day went into Echo Lab studio to make this record. And the first day, like we hadn't even like met Matt Pence yet, like we had just talked to him via email, and we're just like, man, I can't believe he wants to do this, but all right. And so like we weren't exactly sure how the process was going to go, but from day one, it was pretty apparent that it was like kismet. It was very apparent that this was like supposed to happen, and this was the right guy for it. He shows up, and he has his excellent, very unique Matt Pence look. And if you've ever met Matt Pence, you know what I'm saying, and it's fucking killer. But he just right away, like he jumps out of his car with his dog Mavis, and he just goes, all right, before we even enter the studio, I have to ask, am I here to just record this thing for you, or do you want me to actually produce this record? And we were like, well, yes, like the reason we wanted you is because we want your production and your insight and he just says, all right, now just so you know what that means, going into this studio, it means let me do my fucking job, and let me, and like if I am producing the record, like please don't fight me on every single decision, and like that is what I'm here to do, and I'm going to make the best record for you guys possible, and we were like, cool. We were actually very excited for that, because it's nice to just play your music, like it's nice to just be able to focus on playing your songs and letting someone else go, let's do that again, or actually this guitar line was better. I mean, just like it's nice having a set of fresh ears, especially fresh ears that know what they're doing and that have produced records for your heroes, so first thing he did was bring in a keyboardist named Parker Toomey, who is actually Paul Coffin's keyboard player. So like he's like a 22-year-old kid who is on tour with Paul Coffin all the time. And he is a brilliant fucking musician, as well as a songwriter in his own right, who has his own albums out. And Matt just says, this is your new keyboard player for the recording. And we were like, all right, like we've never even met this kid before, but Matt's like, nope. I listened to the songs again. I had a couple different guys in mind. This is your keyboard. This is your piano keyboard player. And we were like, cool. And luckily we immediately became best friends and bonded super hard and had an incredible experience with this kid essentially becoming a band member for 2 weeks and just like helping make the record better than it would have been, and and the other great thing, that we knew right away was that Matt was the right choice. Is he was like, okay, so here's our keyboard player. Also, the more I've been listening to this these demos and the songwriting and stuff, he's like, this can't be a super polished record. It needs to be raw. It needs to be real, and it needs to essentially be a live in the studio rock record, and all of us were terrified at that prospect because we were so used to like, all right, you go in, you do the vocals and guitar, then the drum, like that's the only way we'd ever done it before. Click tracks, all that. And then for this album, he was just like, yeah, I might give Dustin a click at first, but then I'm taking it out of his headphones and you guys are just going for it. And so the majority of the record was done live in the studio. And even the process of doing that and the way he used that process just brought so much more emotion out in the songs and in the way we played them, and in the way the songs interact in your ears afterwards, because we are literally there together interacting on the spot, and there were songs that we went in with the expectation of being like, this is a cowpunk fucking train beat, whatever. Next thing you know, that song is nothing but piano and vocals, and it's gorgeous, and you're just like, fuck yeah, man. It was just moments like that were the reasons we wanted to have a producer in the first place. And Matt Pence was definitely the right choice. And he just had the ability to bring everything amazing out in the band, and like challenge us to just be the best version of a studio band that we could, while also just being ourselves and goofing off and or crying, there's a song on the new record that was actually one of our singles called For the Love of Whatever. And it's about my friend Daniel that I previously mentioned, who inspired the song Babylon for Lovers. Well, it's about Daniel taking his own life, which was definitely a huge impact also on my life. But one of the reasons that song is as good as it is because of Parker Toomey. Like, Parker Toomey came up with that keyboard part on the fucking spot, and it became the song, and like I had to do that song. That was the song I had to sing the most as far as takes on the album, because I kept breaking down in tears. Like, it was awful. Like, every time I'd get halfway through, I would just start bawling my eyes out, and they'd have to stop recording. And eventually we're going through the takes, and the first take I did, the very first take live with the band, where I start crying, he just goes, "No, this is it." And I'm just like, but I'm like, my voice is cracking. And he goes, "Yeah, because it's fucking real." And that became what that song is, and it's like, fuck, I don't know if I would have ever had the balls to make that decision and just say, like, no, keep the tears in, keep this little mistake. Like this is not perfection is not what we're going for here. We're going for honesty, and yeah, I can't wait to share the whole record, because it is essentially a concept record about loss and rebirth and just coming to terms with becoming an adult, like, really, and I just, like, it's fun dropping the singles, and I love the response we've been getting from the singles, but it's definitely an album that was meant to be listened to as an album.
So let's talk about the album and future music and touring for the rest of the year, or at least for the next like 3 to 6 months. What do your fans have to expect?
We're going to be dropping a couple more singles. We're trying to, maintain a fairly regular schedule with that, like a new song every 6 weeks type of thing. And then we're also trying to make sure that there's music videos and lyric videos for all these songs. We're currently in some talks with possible management, and so if we are able to make that work, that'll help us hopefully with things like song placement on streaming playlists, and sponsorships, and maybe and other possible like gig connections that we maybe wouldn't have had without that. We're getting ready. We took a little bit of a break during the winter just because we had such a busy year last year, and now we're at the time. Where we're getting crazy from not being on the road, as opposed to being crazy from being on the road. So we're getting ready to hit it pretty hard, and I'm pretty excited. Like, we're gonna be South by Southwest is our next big thing, and then in April we're gonna be on the road essentially from April 4th through April 22nd. That'll be our next full length tour, so to speak. we start in Red River, New Mexico, which is kind of our home away from home. They have a famous honky tonk there called the Motherlode Saloon, which was actually the bar that was written about in the song Redneck Mother by Ray Wiley Hubbard. He wrote it about that particular bar. And that's our home away from home. We play there all the time and try out new material. So we're starting there. We're heading to Texas and then Arizona, and then we're going to be in California. So it's going to be a pretty cool run. Doing a couple of festivals like the Tex Clips Music Festival and the Cowboy Music Festival on that run. After that, I think we're going to do a couple like regional shows, like do Santa Fe, Roswell, Albuquerque, and then that would be for like the month of May, and then moving into the summer, I think we have a Pacific Northwest tour planned as well as a Midwest tour planned, where I'll actually get to bring the band back to my hometown of Aberdeen, South Dakota for a music festival there. So I'll get to take them and on a little town tour to relive all my trauma, and it'll be great. But yeah, and then throughout the touring, we're always writing and always trying new stuff out. Like I got in a kick recently where I've been revisiting a lot of the punk bands and punk songs that I love, that I feel like are just such well-written songs that they could be themselves country songs. And so like we're working on, like a cover of the song Skeleton Key by the band Banner Pilot, which is a punk band out of Minneapolis. And, and we're working on like turning that into like a modern country song. And, I'm wondering and kind of hoping that maybe we turn that into a little project and put out like a tribute to punk rock EP or, Punk Goes Country or, something, just because it's been kind of fun going down the nostalgia road now that I have let go of some of my anger towards punk rock. and like we're always writing new material. We've had some transitions with band members. We've brought on a keyboard player officially, and we're working with a new bass player now. So that's prevented us from getting as much done as we've wanted to in the last couple months. But now that those things are starting to solidify, it's starting to be smooth sailing. So yeah, we're just really excited to hit the road, start putting out new material, and possibly, even self-produce our next record, since we have so many talented individuals in the band, so.
Well, man, best of luck. I cannot wait to see you guys next month at South by. And then maybe down the road we get a Northeast or Mid-Atlantic tour, so I don't have to travel across the country.
Absolutely love it. Let me tell you. Yeah, I want to go everywhere, man. Like I want to go back to Europe. I've only done Europe with the punk band. I'd love to go with this band, you know what I mean? So, but we'll start with the continental US first and maybe get out to the East Coast before hopping over the pond to Sweden or, Germany.
That sounds like a plan. I like the spirit. Well, everybody, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, do all that fun stuff to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. So it helps us, it helps the bands like Hooks and the Huckleberries. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, RAROutfitters.com for your clothing needs. It is February. It's hoodie season, so check that out. And like always, guys, I've been Dogg. This has been Adam. You guys have been great. This is the Music Lab Podcast.